The northeast wind swept through the old pine trees, carrying bone-chilling cold and the damp, musty scent of earth and stone. Blackwood Castle, standing majestically on a gentle hill in the English countryside, was now shrouded in a gloomy, sorrowful atmosphere. Its moss-covered gray stone walls, which had witnessed generations of Blackwood prosperity, now seemed to groan with the wind. Inside, Edward Blackwood, a 39-year-old billionaire with immense wealth, was consumed by profound grief. His wife, the woman he loved more than life itself, had passed away forever due to a severe illness. This loss not only extinguished the light in his eyes, but also plunged the entire world of his 5-year-old son, Leo, into darkness. Leo, an intelligent and lively boy with golden hair and eyes as blue as a summer sky, was now merely a shadow. The overwhelming shock had caused him to retreat into autism, completely closing himself off from the outside world. Leo didn't speak, didn't smile. He just sat silently by the window, gazing out at the desolate garden, once the vibrant playground filled with his and his mother's laughter. Every late afternoon, as the pale sunlight filtered through the stained glass windows casting shadows on ancient paintings and precious wooden furniture, Blackwood Castle became even more desolate. Edward had tried everything. He took his son everywhere, seeking out the best doctors and the most advanced therapies, but all was in vain. Leo remained deeply immersed in his own world, not a glimmer of hope in his lifeless eyes. Edward felt helpless, his heart shattered as he watched his son wither day by day. His vast business empire was neglected. Billion-dollar contracts now seemed meaningless. He wanted only one thing: to see Leo's smile return. One autumn morning, as crimson maple leaves began to fall gently on the cobblestone path leading to the castle, Edward received a recommendation from his old housekeeper, Mrs. Agatha, who had been with the Blackwood family for over half a century. She suggested a young governess named Clara, who had experience caring for children with special needs. Edward initially held little hope, but this was the last ray of light he could cling to. Clara arrived at Blackwood Castle late one afternoon as mist hung softly over the hills. She was a young woman, about 25 years old, with neatly braided chestnut hair and warm amber eyes. Despite an unfortunate childhood, orphaned at a young age and having to fend for herself since she was very young, Clara still maintained a resilient spirit and a kind heart. She didn't possess a glamorous or luxurious appearance, but exuded a simple, pure beauty, like a wildflower by the roadside. Edward greeted Clara at the main gate, his face still etched with worry and fatigue. He didn't believe that a young woman like Clara could succeed where so many experts had failed, but as he looked into her determined eyes, a strange feeling crept into his heart. "Good afternoon, Mr. Blackwood," Clara said, her voice gentle yet confident. "I am Clara Davies. I am ready to begin." Edward nodded, leading Clara inside. The vast and cold Blackwood Castle made Clara feel a little overwhelmed, but she quickly regained her composure. She knew her task would not be easy. On the first day, Clara spent time observing Leo. The boy sat huddled in a corner of the living room, his eyes fixed on a worn, old picture book. Clara didn't rush to approach him. She simply sat a short distance away, softly singing ancient lullabies her mother used to sing. Clara's voice was clear and warm, like a cool stream flowing into the silent space of the castle. Leo showed no reaction, but Clara sensed a small change in the boy's gaze. In the following days, Clara persistently sought to connect with Leo. She didn't force him to talk or play, but simply stayed by his side, reading to him, drawing colorful pictures, or telling fairy tales about princesses and brave knights. She brought Leo simple toys, sparkling glass marbles, or colorful dried leaves she collected in the garden. The first few weeks were a real challenge. Leo remained completely silent, his eyes empty as if seeing nothing. He often skipped meals and refused all contact. There were times when Edward almost gave up. He witnessed Clara patiently sitting for hours beside Leo, reading, drawing, or simply being silently present. He saw her get frustrated, but she never gave up. "Mr. Blackwood," Clara told him one evening when Edward was about to dismiss her, "I know this is a long journey, but I believe Leo will be all right. We need patience." Her words, though gentle, carried a strange power, pulling Edward back from the brink of despair. Clara didn't just use words. She began to apply her own unique methods. She brought a set of handmade wooden puzzles, large, simple pieces with bright colors. Every day, she patiently sat on the floor, started assembling a few pieces, saying nothing, just letting Leo observe. At first, Leo remained indifferent, but gradually, curiosity began to flicker in his eyes. One afternoon, as Clara was leaving to prepare dinner, she turned back and saw Leo sitting in front of the puzzle, his tiny finger gently touching a piece. Though it was a very small gesture, for Clara and Edward it was a huge step, a brilliant ray of hope piercing through the fog of autism. Edward, standing silently at the door, felt a warm current run through his body. He knew Clara was doing what no one else could. Clara also began to tend to the castle's overgrown garden. She meticulously weeded, tilled the soil, and planted new flowers. Edward often saw her sitting among the flower beds, watching them bloom under the sunlight. He didn't understand why she spent so much time in the garden, but he noticed that whenever Clara gardened, Leo would quietly come to the window, his eyes following her every move. One afternoon, as Clara was watering the rose bushes, a yellow butterfly fluttered around her. Clara smiled, extending her hand for the butterfly to land on her finger. Just then, Leo stepped out of the castle, his eyes wide as he looked at the butterfly. This was the first time he had voluntarily stepped outside since his mother passed away. Clara gently turned, smiling at Leo. She extended her hand with the butterfly towards the boy. Leo hesitated for a moment, then gently touched the butterfly's wing with his finger. The butterfly flew away, but on Leo's face a tiny, fragile smile, like a butterfly's wing, had bloomed. Edward watched the scene from afar. His heart swelled. It was Leo's first smile after so many months in darkness. He knew Clara was not just a governess. She was a miracle. Clara's arrival brought a fresh breeze to Blackwood Castle. She not only cared for Leo, but also brought warmth and vitality to the entire house. Clara often prepared simple but nutritious meals, with dishes that Leo loved. She also encouraged Edward to spend more time with his son, reading books with Leo, playing chess, or simply sitting beside him. Gradually, Leo began to open up more. He was no longer as withdrawn as before, sometimes even whispering a few words to Clara. Edward noticed his son slowly recovering, and he was immensely grateful to Clara. One evening, a sudden storm hit. Lightning streaked across the sky, and the wind whistled through the ancient window panes. The loud thunder frightened Leo. He began to scream and curl up in a corner of the room. Edward rushed over, trying to comfort his son, but Leo continued to tremble. Clara, with incredible calm, gently embraced Leo, patted his back, and softly sang. She showed no fear. Her eyes were filled only with comfort. Gradually, Leo's cries subsided, and he nestled into Clara's arms, finding safety. Edward stood there, witnessing the scene, a warm feeling spreading through his chest. He realized that Clara was not just a caregiver, but a firm support for his son and for himself. Edward's life began to change significantly. He no longer buried himself in work hopelessly, but spent more time observing Clara and Leo. He saw that Clara was not just a governess, but a friend, a second mother to his son. She taught Leo how to identify flowers in the garden, how to care for small birds, and how to listen to the whispers of the wind. Edward realized that Clara had brought Leo things that money couldn't buy: peace, joy, and unconditional love. He began to feel a deep connection with her, an emotion that went beyond mere gratitude. Sometimes he caught Clara's gaze, and in that moment he saw an understanding, a resonance he had lost long ago. He began to dream of a future where Clara was not just a part of Leo's life, but a part of his own. However, the path to happiness was not always smooth. Edward, with his past experiences and social standing, still harbored a certain reserve. He wondered if he deserved a new love, if he was betraying the memory of his deceased wife. On long nights, he often sat alone in the library, looking at his wife's portrait torn by remorse. He was afraid of opening his heart, afraid of experiencing the pain of loss again. But then, the image of Clara patiently beside Leo, her simple smile, and the loving gaze she gave his son reappeared, chasing away the ghosts in his mind. He realized that love was not a replacement, but a continuation, a way to heal and live more fully. Clara was not only healing Leo, but also healing him, little by little, with her sincerity and selfless affection. One day, Clara suggested Edward take Leo on a picnic. Edward hesitated, but Clara convinced him that exposure to nature would be very good for Leo. They went together to a vast lavender field in Provence, France. The sight of millions of purple blossoms stretching to the horizon, exuding a sweet fragrance, delighted Leo immensely. The boy ran and played among the flower beds, his eyes sparkling with joy. Edward looked at his son, his heart filled with an indescribable emotion. How long had it been since he had seen his son so happy? Afterward, they visited Mont Saint-Michel, a magnificent rocky island with an ancient abbey standing majestically amidst the sea. The sunset cast a pink hue over the sky and the sea, creating an ethereal scene. Leo stood beside Clara, mesmerized by the illuminated abbey. Clara told him stories about knights and princesses, about adventurous journeys. Edward stood afar, watching the two of them, his heart suddenly feeling strangely peaceful. The picnics, the afternoon strolls in the garden, the fairy tales Clara told, all gradually healed the wounds in Leo's soul. He not only recovered from autism, but also became more active and cheerful. Leo called Clara Mama Clara, and whenever Clara was absent, he would ask for her. Edward realized that Clara was not only the one who helped his son find himself again, but she was also the one who brought light back into his life. He began to look at Clara with different eyes, eyes full of love and respect. He saw in her strength, compassion, and a beautiful soul he had never seen in anyone else. One evening, when Leo was sound asleep, Edward and Clara sat by the fireplace sipping hot tea. The flickering firelight illuminated Clara's face, highlighting her delicate features. Edward gathered all his courage and spoke from the bottom of his heart. "Clara," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "thank you. You saved Leo and you saved me too. I love you." Clara was surprised, her cheeks flushed. She hadn't expected Edward to have feelings for her. She, too, had felt a connection with him, with this strong yet vulnerable man. She loved the way he cared for Leo, loved his sincerity and warmth. "I love you too, Edward," Clara whispered, her eyes sparkling with happy tears. They shared their first kiss, a passionate, gentle kiss, encompassing all the emotions they had suppressed for so long. That kiss was not just the beginning of a new love, but also a promise of a bright future, where happiness would bloom again on the grounds of Blackwood Castle. Edward and Clara's wedding took place on a splendid autumn afternoon when the ginkgo-lined paths turned golden. Blackwood Castle was magnificently decorated, yet not overly elaborate, exuding a warm, intimate beauty. Fresh flowers and flickering candles filled every corner, creating a romantic and sacred atmosphere. Leo, in a small suit, held Clara's hand as they walked down the aisle. He was no longer the autistic child he once was, but a lively, radiant boy, his eyes full of joy. Edward stood at the end of the aisle, watching Clara and Leo, his heart overflowing with happiness. He knew this was the moment he had long awaited. After the wedding, Edward and Clara spent time traveling. They went to Venice, the city of love with its emerald canals and romantic gondolas. They rowed boats together, admiring the ancient houses reflected in the water, listening to the melodious love songs of the gondoliers. Clara had never imagined she would have such a life full of love and happiness. They also visited the Azores, a beautiful archipelago in the Atlantic Ocean, with sapphire lakes and lush green hills. They hiked together, exploring majestic waterfalls and pristine forests. Clara loved the wild beauty of nature, and Edward also found peace in these trips. Returning to Blackwood Castle, their lives were filled with laughter and joy. Clara became pregnant, and Edward couldn't hide his happiness. Leo was also very excited to welcome his sibling. He often stroked Clara's belly, whispering stories and songs. A year later, a healthy baby boy was born, named Daniel. 2 years after that, another beautiful baby girl arrived, named Lily. Blackwood Castle was no longer a cold, gloomy place, but a home filled with the laughter of children. Edward and Clara raised their children together, teaching them about love, compassion, and appreciation for the simple values of life. They often organized family picnics, explored new lands together, or simply gathered by the fireplace, telling each other stories. Leo grew up to be an intelligent and talented young man, yet he retained his warmth and affection. He always loved and protected his siblings and was forever grateful to Clara for giving him a second family. Time passed, the children grew up, and Blackwood Castle still stood majestically, witnessing the ups and downs of life. Edward and Clara, though older, still maintained their passionate love as they did in the beginning. They often walked hand in hand in the garden, where the flowers Clara planted still bloomed brightly. Their lives were not always smooth. There were difficult times and challenges, but they always overcame them together. Love, understanding, and resilience helped them build a happy family, a home everyone dreamed of. Clara retained her simple beauty and pure soul. She never forgot her unfortunate childhood, and she was always grateful for the wonderful family life had given her. She often participated in charity activities, helping orphaned children and those in difficult circumstances. Edward, from a cold billionaire, had now become a warm, compassionate man. He realized that money could not buy happiness, but happiness came from the simplest things: family love, inner peace, and moments lived fully. On late afternoons, when the golden sunlight shone through the stained glass windows, Edward and Clara often sat together, watching their grandchildren play in the garden. The clear laughter of children echoed throughout the castle, dispelling all darkness and sorrow. They knew life was a long journey, with many challenges and surprises. But as long as they had each other, with love and faith, they would always find happiness in every moment. The story of Edward and Clara, of Leo and the children, is a testament to the power of love, of healing, and of the simple beauty that life bestows. It is a story of hope, of resilience, and of a family that found light after long days in darkness. Life at Blackwood Castle now is a vibrant tapestry of happiness, where every moment is cherished and every day is a gift.